All right. I'm here with Alan Franks. He's the founder of the Business Planning Institute. How's it going, Alan?
Hey, great, Steve. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to really get into some planning and tactical tips. But before we get there, let's talk about your background. How
Yeah,
did you get started?
yeah. So I got started out of the best way to get started, which is desperation. I studied economics at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. I graduated in 2010, just in the depths of the economic depression. And, I thought I would be a jet-setting consultant or, I actually had an internship lined up at Lloyd's of London in London. And realistically, after the '08 financial crisis, just everything kind of dissipated. So I found myself knocking on the door of the Northwestern Mutual office as any good, young college grad would. And I was, next thing you know, doing commission only sales. And I learned a lot there for 5 years, but I most importantly probably learned what I didn't want to be when I grew up, which was commission only sales. I wanted to, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep, I wanted to do the exact opposite and really dive into financial planning for the clients I had. So when I got married to my wife, Allison, we moved to Atlanta, and that's when I switched firms and learn how to do what we call true comprehensive fee-based financial planning rather than just focusing in, if you look at most financial advisors out there, they typically focus in on either investments or insurance. And we thought, man, why in the heck can those two not work together? Why can't they complement each other? Why can't they help people get to their destination a little bit quicker? So what we ended up building is, we use a car analogy, we ended up building a financial planning process with with both the gas pedal, which would be your investments, and the brake pedal, which would be risk management, in the same car. And we're like, hey, let's throw in some add-ons on these cars. Let's give people their own dashboard where they can monitor their wealth growth over time. Let's help them create a budgeting using real data and have a budget be automated for them. Let's help them with their estate planning. Let's help them price out their car and their home insurance. Let's just say every single way that we can add value into a financial planning relationship, let's do that. And what we found is that whereas there's a ton of risk management, annuity, life insurance people out there, and there's a ton of investment advisors, there's really not a ton of people that actually combine everything together and really become that trusted partner to people. And so we were doing that a ton. And then what we found is that post-COVID, a lot of our clients, just budgets were getting really constricted there. Inflation was really taking a bite out of their discretionary income. And so where we found ourselves just leaning into was the business owner marketplace there. And what we found there is that, okay, if there wasn't a lot of financial planners in the personal marketplace that really brought everything together, there sure as hell wasn't anybody in the business marketplace. Like, you have your 401k expert, sure. You have your estate planning attorney over here. You may have your accountant over here. But at the end of the day, they're typically not even talking to each other here. So what we found is this huge gap in the business owner marketplace for that trusted partner that could really build a really good team, or take the team that the business owner already has and get them communicating and in alignment a lot more. And so what we've been able to find is, man, just opening up those floodgates of communication between their professional team there and helping bring almost everything under one roof has really added a lot of synergies to and really filled this gap that what business owners are looking for here.
Nice. Yeah, I think when it comes to planning around all different aspects as an operator, and people listening to this will kind of understand this, especially when it comes to like an exit, there's a lot of ingredients that people don't think about when they're stepping up to the plate to potentially sell a business, raise a round of funding and secondaries and all that stuff. So I think that there's a lot of complexity here. So when it comes to the mistakes that you see, I think that this is a good one to start with.
Yeah.
I like running with mistakes first. So let's talk about that. What are some of the common mistakes that you see?
Yeah, I want two that just jump off of the bat here right at the beginning. Number one, let's go with this. I think when we meet with a business owner, one of the first questions we ask is, hey, what do you think your business is worth, right? And if they're being honest, the truth is they really oftentimes do not know, right? Most of the time they have no clue. And that just goes and reinforces a point that a lot of people look at their business as what we call a lifestyle business. I don't know what my business is worth. I just know that the income it generates for me and my family to live, right? And the problem with running what we call a lifestyle business is when we're just, and we are, as business owners, I'm vulnerable to this mistake, but at some point we get kind of comfortable with the extra income that we're bringing in, right? It's like, well, why would I go work harder? I don't have to, right? And we got to break through that just basic natural human instinct right there, right? Well, when we stop looking at our business as like an annuity and an income stream, we start looking at it as an asset that's going to play a vital role in our retirement whenever we do exit. All of a sudden, this changes the game, right? It changes the game, and it makes it just a little bit more fun. We're not just doing this because we have to do it because we have to earn an income. All of a sudden, we're building up a business that's got value, and we're going to sell this thing for multiple millions of dollars one day, right? So the first mistake I would say is not doing a valuation and knowing what your business is actually worth. And if you go to the businessplanninginstitute.com, there's a 10-minute assessment you can take right there that's going to get pretty damn near accurate. It's not a qualified valuation that would cost way too much money. It's a non-qualified valuation. In 10 minutes, you give a really good answer of what that value is. And then we can track it over time. Because I would say the biggest mistake I see is not necessarily not knowing the value of the business, but it's not tracking it over time. Because whatever we track grows. And if you want to, one of the best things about the S&P 500 is that's very easily trackable, right? And it grows over time. It's under scrutiny. You can track it down to the second on here of what the value is of the stocks that you hold, but we have no clue what the value of the largest stock that we hold, which is our own privately held company, right? So it would be, the biggest mistake would be not knowing the value of the company and not updating that value over time so that we know whether or not we're moving in the right direction and at the right pace. So that would be the biggest one. That's one. 1B, though, is this. I want to imagine that you're on a tightrope and you have a balancer, you have a pole in your hands where you're balancing, walking across this tightrope. And if we put too much money into the business, all of a sudden our personal side is going to suffer. And if we put too much money into our personal pockets, our business side is going to suffer, right? And all too often, we've seen people sacrifice their personal financial planning, their family's financial planning for the business, right? And so I believe probably the biggest mistake that business owners are making is that until you are financially independent outside of your business, you are a slave to your business, right? You are a slave to your business until you are financially independent outside of your business, right? Because maybe you have to keep on that client that's a huge pain in the ass because you have to have that revenue to keep the business going, because that revenue that keeps business going is what keeps your lifestyle going, right? Well, when we are financially independent outside of our business, right, you don't necessarily have as many bosses as you used to, right? Because we gave up whatever bosses we had in our corporate life to just go get a bunch of bosses that we call clients now, in our new business owner life, right? But that would be the two top mistakes: is just not knowing what the value of the business is and not tracking it, but then also sacrificing way too much on the personal side to keep the business running. I realize, listen, I could say the business should run for you, not you running the business. Listen, guys, that's bullshit. We're all business owners here. We're going to work our asses off in our business, right? But at some point, the business does need to work for us a little bit here. And that's one of the things that we really help our business owners understand is, hey, what proportion should go to us, right? How many cents out of every dollar do we set aside for taxes? How much for working capital? How much for our personal financial planning? So just having a framework there could really help get you going in the right direction.
Well said. Well said. Let's shift to timing. From what you've seen, when is the right time? Everybody's different, but when's the right time to exit?
Yeah. So I come from, my dad's the typical baby boomer. Okay, and he worked his tail off and built up a really good business. And what we found in the last 10 years is that, he got comfortable. It was a bit more of a lifestyle business, got comfortable, and his revenue stayed the same, but guess what didn't, right? His expenses, okay? And that is going to happen. And in every single older company that we've found, you have the growth mode, you have the growth stage, you've got startup stage, growth stage, right? You have the maturity stage, and you have the decline stage. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean the revenues decline, but maybe they just stay flat, but the expenses keep on going up, profits shrink, eventually cash flow drops. The next thing you know, a person that may have been able to retire 10 years ago no longer can retire. Maybe they've been borrowing money to keep the business afloat, right? So I want to encourage everybody to think about their business as you would a professional athlete. Okay. We all know those athletes that just stay on for just a little bit too long, right? And their value drops, their legacy gets hurt a little bit, right? And they don't go out on top, right? I'm from Atlanta. Big Chipper Jones city here, right? Chipper Jones went out on top. He damn near hit 400 his last year, right? If he could he have played the next year and been a top 5 third baseman? Yeah, of course he could have. Probably a couple more years, actually, right? But he chose the right time to go out on top. And I think that we need to think about that in our businesses. Is that, okay, startup phase, certainly not the time to exit. Growth stage, heck no, we're having a ton of fun there. But at some point here, you've got to be honest with yourself that I have taken this business as far as I can take it. It's time for me to pass my baby that I've poured my blood, sweat, and tears in to somebody else, because that's who's going to be able to take it to the next level. Maybe let's use a baby as an example. Maybe it's, hey, okay, high school's graduating. We got to send them off to college because you've taken them as far as you can go, right? And so that's kind of where I would say is right when we start having maturity where all of a sudden our growth levels year over year are really starting to decline. At that point, we need to be looking at this and say we need to do 3 things. We need to, go buy another business to expand, right, and get a strategic buy-in here. We need to bring in a partner to help alleviate some of your time so that you can go grow it, or it's time to look at an exit. So we really want to get it in that maturity phase before we start declining.
Well said. So when it comes to like maximizing the value, I've heard a lot of different approaches. We just sort of briefly touched it, but what can people do to sort of drive up that value? You mentioned buying a business, so, in the same lane as you could definitely kind of supercharge that valuation. But when it comes to increasing the value today for people listening, what type of things could they think about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, here's our belief. Exit planning, the term exit planning doesn't do good in study groups. It doesn't poll well. A lot of business owners don't want to think about it, right? Guys, our belief is this. Exit planning is just good business planning with a deadline, right? Exit planning is simply this. Hey, how can we remove ourselves from going from the driver of the bus to the front seat of the bus where we're telling the driver where to go, to maybe the third row of the bus where we're monitoring the person who's telling the driver where to go, to off the damn bus completely, right? So the truth is, everybody knows this, nobody wants to buy a job, right? If you look at all the headaches and all the fires that you're having to put out as a business owner on a daily basis, why would somebody want to buy that, right? And so what we've got to do from a business planning strategy is make certain that not only do we have SOPs and KPIs and checklists and all that stuff, but that we actually have it in a way, in a format where employees can use this, right? And then what we can do is a great book called Buy Back Your Time is continuously hire people, not necessarily for growth, but to do the stuff that you're doing so that you can continuously focus in on growth, right? So if you are handing over a hot pile of garbage here, right, obviously not many people are going to be willing to pay for it. You might be able to sell it internally to one of your employees for, a mom and pop multiple here, right? But in general here, when you go and take that assessment, it's going to ask 18 questions on that assessment. And be honest on this assessment. Those 18 drivers are really going to show you what we could do to bridge what we call the value gap, what your company's worth right now and what it could be if you're answering really good on all those questions, right? And that can be the driver to say, okay, let's work on your sales and marketing. Let's work on your brand. Let's work on your operations, right? But the truth is, right, is that the revenue and the EBITDA here are really going to be what drives your business. However, if we can get your business working like a well-oiled machine and close that value gap, inevitably that's going to help you drive more revenue. It's going to help you become more profitable so that we get this cycle going here of, hey, we're running a good business here. All of a sudden it's going to be more attractive to buyers because it's a well-oiled machine. And by the way, because it's a well-oiled machine, we're able to go grow more.
Yeah, I like that. When it comes to transferability, this is like a topic that has come up pretty frequently over the last couple of episodes here about making something transferable that some may not think is as transferable. I'm curious to get your take on this. Like, what are some levers that you've seen people pull to make things have a better transferability when it comes to the time for an exit?
You got it. So I tell you what really kills me, and it's not even funny when I hear it. It's, well, my business isn't sellable, right? Oh, man, that's an ego right there. That's your ego talking. Like, are you really that important that you can't find a way to train somebody else to do this? And we sat down with, and you're going to see a lot of this, or we're calling it the silver tsunami here. It's actually much harder to find these businesses, I found. It seems like, out of this older generation, you kind of have three types of businesses. One is a really well-run business with high revenues and private equities kind of swooping in and taking those up. The other is the businesses that are so bad that they would rather just shut down than actually reinvent themselves. And then in the middle there are the businesses that, mom and pop shops that are viable. Like, the multiples are favorable. The challenge that we're finding there is that these mom and pop shops really didn't do any personal financial planning along the way. So, if it's not the right dollar, they just can't sell, right? So, but I'm so sorry. I forgot the original question, Steve. Can you ask the original question?
Just transferability.
Transferability. All right. So here's the deal. I heard a quote one time that has really stuck to me, and it said, anybody can sell a business. It may be for $1, right? But anybody can sell a business. Not everybody can transfer it. And what they mean by that is transfer it maybe internally, whether that's a family member or just a really good employee that's there. But I really think that every business owner needs to strive to have an internal replacement, okay? And they need to strive that way for two reasons. Number one is just risk management. How many business owners listening to this would their business be worth nothing if they had not waken up this morning, right? If you do not have a buy-sell agreement in place, and everybody thinks buy-sell agreement with the partners, no, I'm talking about internally too. Let's say you're the only person that runs this place, that owns the building, right? We need an internal replacement right here. If you don't wake up that morning, where we have an agreement where they're going to pay out your spouse or your estate over the next 5 years for ownership of this bill. Otherwise, it's kind of worthless, right? And so I would say the transferability there is that we should strive to have an internal replacement there. Now, here's the cool thing, is that, okay, if you still want to go sell it to an external buyer because you will get more money that way, all right, well, cool. You've got a well-trained management person right there, right? So it helps you increase the value of the business. Let's say that there isn't a market out there. Okay, cool. We can work out maybe an installment sale with that person that's in that business, right? And then the third thing is just from risk management. What if we didn't wake up this morning? Awesome. We got somebody to keep the lights on and up and running, and hopefully a legal agreement there where they're going to pay you X amount of dollars for the next 5 years to your spouse or your estate to help buy out the sweat equity. And we talk about sweat equity all the time, but what about the mental equity and the emotional equity that goes into running a business, right? There's so much that goes in. And the one thing that we are robbed of as business owners is presence, right? How hard is it to turn off at 5 o'clock and be with my kids from 5 to 7:30? I literally get 3 hours a day with my kids, and I have to fight like hell just to be present in those 3 hours, right? So I plan on selling my business one day because, it's more than just the 9 to 5. You can go work W-2 9 to 5, if it's for the income stream. What we're really doing this for is for that enterprise value that we're going to sell for one day, right? And so that's why we really want to focus in on building that enterprise value there, because that's the result and the reward for all the mental and emotional equity that goes on behind the scenes that W-2 people just don't have to deal with.
Yeah, agreed. Fighting for that, for those hours is crucial. And yeah, it is a lot. And I think you touched on a couple things when we were talking about timing. When I was in San Francisco, a lot of people would say, like, you need bus insurance. You need to have somebody that can, if you don't wake up tomorrow, somebody that can operate. And taking it a step further, I remember one of my mentors years ago said, you don't have any bench depth right now. You need more bench depth. And it was what they were saying effectively was that you need to have someone right next to you that could take it over completely. And it's like another form of bus insurance, like for taking the business through a transfer, which I've gained a lot of respect for over the years. And I respect people with apprentices and this whole bench depth concept when they operate from day one. Like they're literally finding that successor early on in their venture. So let's talk a little bit about the actual tactical piece that I wanted to get to, which was a tax perspective.
Yeah.
And before we get to the finale, what are some of the things that you've seen really work when it comes to planning, and what are the smartest things that people can do when they're kind of getting ready?
Yeah. So when we're looking at a situation and when we're looking at taking on a client, we actually have a 10-part checklist that we do before every client we take on. And if we don't think that there's 7 or 8 ways that we can help them, we won't take them on. But I would say that the biggest obstacle in the way of all of our clients reaching their retirement are their expenses. Right? The expenses play a huge role. And for our clients that we work with, in general, taxes are their biggest expense, right? So we solve a lot of problems, but the 3 main problems that we like to solve are income tax problems, right? Capital gains tax problems, and estate tax problems if we do this well. Now, they just signed into law permanent until the next bill, that the estate planning tax is $15 million per person, right? If you and your spouse have an estate over $30 million, highly recommend you give me a call. We got a lot of cool tips and tricks that we could do to really help eliminate that. But obviously most people fall underneath there, right? So let's work backwards in. On the capital gains side of things, there are a few things that we could do to help offset capital gains tax when you go to sell. There's things such as opportunity zones where we can invest in to defer those capital gains taxes there. There's Section 1202 for C Corps there that might make sense to some extent there. There's deferred sales trust that we could actually sell it almost like an installment sale, except you're selling it into a trust, so there's no risk that the buyer's not going to pay you. Like the money's just going into a trust, and we can drag out and basically lower those capital gains over time here, particularly if you have a lot of income in the year that you sell the business, right? We might be in that 20% taxable capital gains tax plus the Affordable Care Act 3.8 surcharge, right? And maybe next year we'll be in just the plain Jane 15% tax bracket, right? So maybe we could just extend it out a year or two to pay a lot less in taxes, right? So there are a lot of things, particularly if you own a building. If you own the building there and you don't want to be a landlord and you sell the building, there's some really good 1031 exchange funds where you move it in and do, lease buybacks with triple net lease. That's a lot of technology there, but just very safe stuff that's going to give you a nice dividend payment with good, decent growth on there, but in general, kick the tax can down the road on the real estate, right? So if there's a way that we could help you defer taxes, we're gonna approach you with it. But I would say the biggest thing that we're working on right now is on the income tax side, right? So there's really 2 advantages to being a business owner today. And it used to be freedom, right? It used to be freedom to set your own schedule. I would say that actually is not an advantage anymore. Post-COVID, if you're W-2, a lot of W-2s are working remotely. If you need to take your kid to the doctor, most bosses don't even care anymore. Sure, just make it up later, right? Just get done what you need to get done, right? The difference in the freedom aspect of a W-2 and a business owner, it might even switch, right? I would say a lot of our business owners don't even have the freedom that the W-2 people have anymore, right? Because they're enslaved to their business, right? But the 2 advantages to having your own business is the ability to sell it later on, which we talked about earlier, and the tax advantages, right? The tax advantages for an employee. We are firm believers that the IRS tax code was written to incentivize business ownership, right? And we are there to help our clients understand those incentives and utilize those incentives to the best of their ability there. So when it comes to what we do best for business owners, we're really focusing in on helping them save on those income taxes that are right there, because that's going to be the easiest one that we can help with.
Nice. Yeah, I think that it's such an underrepresented space that a lot of people don't think about. Usually the type of character, individual, taking it personally, myself, sometimes we're not as organized and we're just running a million miles an hour, and sometimes we make mistakes, and a big one is around planning and getting ready.
Totally. And Steve, let me follow up with you on that here. There's a reason that it's underrepresented. Okay, and there's the reasons would be, number one, the reason that there's not a lot of people who do what I do in the business space is that it's hard. It's so much easier to go deal with an executive that's got a 401k rollover and needs to choose employee benefits and get the basic estate planning. And that's easy, man. Dealing with a business owner, right? Well, we got to go set up the 401k. We got to get the attorney in there to not just do estate planning, but operating agreements, buy-sell agreements. There's so much more to think about right there. But maybe the more important reason that it's underrepresented is that there are a lot of broke entrepreneurs in this world. There are a lot of broke entrepreneurs in this world that have just invested every single cent back into their company. They have very low liquidity, right? And from a financial advisory standpoint, who wants to work with that? An exit in 5 years of a couple $1,000,000. I'll just go get another executive that's retiring next month, right? A lot less time, right? So, we've made the commitment to that area, but I do think it's not funny, it's really sad, but the amount of broke entrepreneurs, and it does not have to be that way. If you're listening to this podcast and you are a broke entrepreneur, I just want to let you know, all right? We all live two lives. The life we're currently living and that unlived life within. And between those two lives is a really good plan, right? A really good, well thought out, well executed financial plan. And if we can get that in place, let's quit lying to ourselves. Being a business owner does not mean all the time sacrificing with none of the reward. Why do it? Right? So anyways, that's what we help a lot of our business owners understand, is that
right on.
They can also be wealthy as well.
Well said. Broke entrepreneurs are more common than wealthy ones. I know that for a fact. So it is part of the game for sure. So that takes us to the finale.
Yeah.
Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Alan 10 years ago?
Man, I tell you, and not even 10 years ago, I wouldn't even go like 2 years ago, maybe even like 2 months ago, is I've realized more than anything, more than a financial advisor or an author or a personal coach, whatever it is, I'm a team builder, okay? And I really feel like that's been the most recent chapter of the last 15 years of my career, is realizing, I don't have to do everything. There's no way that I could possibly do everything, right? So when I say I'm a team builder, I mean, okay, I look at my team with my company, right, and building out that team. But realistically, what I'm doing now is just helping business owners build their professional team. Not necessarily their team in their business, right? I'm not going to pretend I know their business or their employees better than them. But every single time I sit down with people, the first thing we do is we look at 10 different professions, from their estate planning attorney to their business attorney to their accountant to maybe their realtor, their investment advisor, their insurance agent, right? And we rank them 1 to 10. And at the end of it, we say, okay, there's 10 professions, ranked them 1 to 10. You scored a 60. How do you feel about that? Right? And it was just helping people understand that they're only going to get as far as their team allows them. Like this whole get shit done mentality, really intense, just knocking things out. Yeah, that's how I was for so long. And I constantly burned out, constantly hitting a ceiling. At some point you start lying to yourself and you actually stop growing because you're so afraid of doing the more work, right? And so that's the biggest thing that I've learned as we've grown our business, is that, hey, this is really a team sport, and we need to consistently rank our team in what might be a 90, an A+ team, right? Next year might only be a B, right? Maybe the accountant that was such a rock star, guess what happened? Well, he was a rock star and he got really busy because he's such a rock star. Maybe we need to go find somebody else, right? And so building a team is kind of like putting the right football team on the field. You got to have substitutes, right? But more importantly, that team has to be on the same game plan, right? We got to be on the same play call, and we got to be able to move that ball down the field for our business owners. And so that's what I've really learned, not only the last 10 years, but I just keep on learning, is like, realistically, if we want to get where we want to go, we've got to build a really good team, get them aligned on the mission, right? And then execute on that.
Yeah, I like that. And I think I've learned that personally as well. Like, just your team around you, just as a human, whatever venture you're in, having the right professionals helping you is pretty crucial. I've learned that as well. That's very, very well said. So where are you building now, and where can people learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. I do have a book out there called Empowered Money. Kind of connects the financial planning to the overall life goals there. And so we're promoting that book. It is a real book. It is very good. What I mean by real is it's a really good step-by-step, good overall comprehensive viewpoint. But honestly, I would, if I'm listening to this, I would just go to the businessplanninginstitute.com. You'll find out everything there. We're going to have stuff on our book, stuff on our financial planning, and stuff on our business planning. And that's where you're going to get that 10-minute free self-assessment to get that business valuation there. I just want to let you know, if you guys do that, I am going to reach out. Like, I don't want to be sneaky about it. Like, it is a lead capture for us. But in general, it's a really good tool that will give you a lot of insight into your business, the value gap of what you can do to grow. And once again, if you close that value gap, inevitably that revenue and that profit will follow. So just go to thebusinessplanninginstitute.com. Feel free to email me, Alan at thebusinessplanninginstitute.com. That's ALAN at thebusinessplanninginstitute.com. And would love to hear from anybody.
Awesome. Well, wherever you guys are listening, on Spotify or iTunes, the links that Alan mentioned will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, Alan.
Hey, thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate it.